helpful. So our time together will be covering kind of these four areas. First, the goal of this session, again, is to help candidates learn strategies for leveraging your degree, whichever graduate program or degree you're studying, leveraging that degree to position yourself for promotion. We know folks are at different phases. Some of you are earlier in your graduate career. Some of you maybe are wrapping up. Some of you may be done with your graduate components yet. So thinking about, the mindset of how can we help position you to be promotable, to be undeniable for that next role in your organization. So we're going to start with some of the mindset. Then this is the reflective part. We're going to talk, making sure about, yourself, taking the time, set aside time in the session to do some reflection. Then looking at understanding what are your goals, what are your options, what are some of the things you could be within your current organization. And again, some of you may be earlier in this process than others, so giving you some tips about how you can start to excavate and mine ideas and resources and champions in an organization to help you get where you want to go. And then finally, some tips for activating your plan and calibrating as needed. This is a general session. You are a unique human being, though. So the tips and the things that are going to be shared throughout this session are going to be high level. Most will apply to you, but not everything, depending on the space that you're in. There's always nuance to your own career. And that's why we always encourage you to work directly with a career coach on your strategy. And I'll have a friendly reminder at the end about scheduling a follow-up appointment with a coach. So beginning with that mindset, it can feel like just agreeing and committing to going to graduate school feels already like a huge lift. Like, oh my gosh, that in itself is big. And so much time and energy is put into just surviving graduate school and the learning and balancing life in all of its forms. But what happens, and as a coach, I'm guessing Coach Will can attest to this as well, as we work with candidates, we start to just see that transformation happen. Like transformation is absolutely inevitable throughout graduate school because your brain is lit up. You're also managing multiple things. You are learning, you're stress testing yourself intentionally and investing in yourself. So it is very common that as you get to the nearing the end of your graduate program, there is this desire to continue to change, evolve, grow, but also wanting something to show for this time and energy that you've invested. And one of the ways we do that is positioning for promotion. You might look at other career options. Such as, pursuing, saying, I'm interested in supply chain and operations. I'm interested in doing that, but in just the current work I'm doing, but I want to do it in a different company or in a different industry, or I want to leverage my degree to pivot functions, pivot industries, different ways. Maybe I realize I want to go back to an organization I was in before. Now I've got the skills and knowledge that I was looking for, and I'm more competitive. Maybe I'm going to start. You're going to start your own thing. But today, for the sake of just today, we're talking about how to position for promotion. And again, working with your coach is absolutely paramount in this process because your coach is going to serve as that strategic thought partner to help you identify what are some of your options and creating as much choice as possible in your career, which is what our job is. So again, coming into this mindset of it takes a lot of energy just to pursue that graduate degree. Now we want to be thinking about, okay, how am I making sure I'm maximizing the return on my graduate degree investment so that I can position for promotion, knowing that there are also other options you might want to be pursuing, but we're just focusing on promotion today. Common myths that we see as coaches and we hear from candidates. Very common for us to engage with a candidate who is nearing graduation and will say, how are you, what are you looking for in your next career chapter? And their hope, and I wish this for you too, that you just get that $50,000 spot bonus from your leader who is like, yes, congratulations, we're so proud of you for earning that degree. Here is a fancy new title. Here's a bunch of money, no additional responsibilities. Congratulations. Unfortunately, that's not how things necessarily work. We wish we could offer that. But there is an energy you have to invest in this process yourself. Because you're pursuing school, there is inherent value in a graduate degree. There's but general kind of street knowledge of like, oh, someone who's pursuing a graduate degree, they are learning how to learn and they're stress testing themselves and they're taking some classes in different topics. They're a hard worker. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it translates into a promotion right when you graduate or to a promotion in general. There are some organizations, leaders that value graduate degrees differently. Um, there are variables such as timing, markets, tariffs, opportunities. So it's never guaranteed. And because you are earning a degree doesn't necessarily mean you're guaranteed a promotion, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't have the conversation anyways. We also remember people leaders are busy. They are looking for you to kind of meet them halfway when it comes to that professional development, professional growth, wanting you to come to the table with some ideas that, your leader doesn't always know that you want to advance your career in the organization or how you want to do that. So that's partly on you to have, it's 100% on you to drive that conversation. And then finally, thinking that we'll have a candidate who's like, oh, I'm currently a business analyst. And so I want to be a senior business analyst as soon as, I graduate. And the question is that the only option? Are there more options? Is there a job that maybe you haven't heard of yet in your team or in an adjacent team? What are the actual needs of the organization? There could be more postings, more things that are out there that you don't quite know about yet. So we're going to share some tips about how you can continue to learn more. So remembering you have to be the agent of your own career. You are your hype person. You are your own advocate, the driver of your own career. And so the first thing is, and this is where I encourage you to have a piece of paper or something you can take notes on, is that we have to be able to reflect on the value of your degree, your graduate experience, and then articulate that. And again, this is a lot of what we do in coaching is helping you to, especially the articulation part. But when we're reflecting on your graduate experience, there's a couple of tools I'm going to just breeze through really quickly or kind of techniques that I would recommend. First is let's just do an assessment and gather information as though we're building an academic resume. You know your courses that you've taken, the instructors and the assignments and all of that, but nobody else does. So why don't we take a moment to, if you were to jot down what are the classes that I took, what were some of those memorable projects that I had and the deliverables, right? Like what was the problem if you were working on a case? If you did any experiential learning, somebody noted like Carlson Consulting, the enterprise was a really beneficial thing. If you've done the Mill Evaluation Lab or Ascend Fellows, case competitions, anything that was really pairing that classroom knowledge with like real world application, jotting those things down. So keeping those in a place. I also encourage something similar for your resume, just your general resume, to have one big primary brain dump resume that has all of your info in it. And then you kind of edit that and actually build your application resume when you're applying to roles. Same thing can go for the academic. It's amazing the number of things we forget that we did in graduate school. The further away you get from graduate school, some things they just eliminate quickly out of your brain. So jotting these things down, what were some of those? It's an easy, low stakes, like what are some of the things that I've learned? Some of those classes, these favorite classes, things, having those jotted down on a Google Doc, someplace that you can hold on to. It's just the easiest. If there's one thing you do today, it's jotting these things down. Then we head into that next, which is a deeper step of like self-assessment and reflection. And again, if we're doing our jobs right here at Carlson and you're having the academic and co-curricular experiences that we hope you are going to grow and you are going to leave a different person than you were when you started. And so with that reflection, we're thinking about the ways that you've expanded your knowledge and understanding, your skills, abilities, interests, leadership. I think a lot about like, how have I changed? How has my thinking changed? How do I approach things differently? And so I have a couple of slides. I'm not digging into each of these slides, but these are just warm up things as you're kind of jotting down some notes. I want you to be reflecting as you're hearing me talk right now. What knowledge, additional industry knowledge have you gained? So you maybe have taken a class and learned more about fill in the blank, like the medical industry is a great example here at Carlson. Functional or embedded knowledge that you have gained. And so learning how to do actual processes, procedures, things that are, what does a marketer do? What does an operations leader need to do? What does a people leader need to do? And the strategic knowledge, being able to zoom out and understand the why behind things. That's a little more esoteric. The knowledge part, it can be a little harder to articulate, but as I'm saying this, hopefully there's some things that are popping into your mind. The skills piece can be the easier piece for folks to say, oh, yes, I can think of some of the skills that I've honed. When we know that employers look to MBAs, and this is, I'm just using an MBA example, even though we have folks across our graduate programs in this, but we know that there are certain top skills that companies are looking for with business leaders. So not just MBAs, but I think of business leaders. And these are some of those top skills that we see as being really continually popular. Coach Will and I can tell you when we're doing interview prep with folks, I don't have to read the position description to know candidates need to have an example of a time that they managed a team, worked collaboratively, worked through ambiguity, not knowing the path forward. But so as you're reflecting on class experiences you've had, but also maybe some of your professional experiences these last few years too. Times that you've been able to hone the skills that you see on the screen. In addition, some other skills that I think are addressing more of the human, or some people call soft skills, but I think about those as the human interaction skills, being able to set goals, achieve those goals, internal motivation, building empathy, understanding other folks' lived experiences, adapting to changing environments, negotiating, listening actively. All of these are skills that you might be thinking, how am I going to actually demonstrate that on a resume? We work with you on some of those things. They don't always show up in resumes, but just thinking about the skills, the tools that you have been adding to your toolkit. Also thinking about these last few years, what has caught your eye? Where do you have energy? Inevitably, you within a job, within graduate school, there are classes, activities, experiences that are really interesting to you and that sort high, and that you're like, oh, this is the stuff that's like, I totally nerd out on. And we see it when we're talking with candidates and asking about which classes they're loving right now. And you all mentioned, like, what are classes that are high impact? And then there's the ones they never mention too, that are like, oh, maybe, it's not to say it's not a good class, but it just might not light you up as much. So thinking about, where do you get some of that energy? What are the things that are exciting to, that you get to do? And how has that evolved throughout your graduate school or your career so far? The things that used to give you energy maybe don't anymore. And how, and what does that help you understand about yourself? More. So I've shared before in, sessions that as I've transitioned parts of my career, earlier parts of my career to later, earlier parts of my career, I would be in a lot of large group settings of things, large collaborative and things. But what I really loved was one-on-one things. And so, as I was making some career transitions, I was prioritizing, like, I like the more one-to-one interactions, thinking about what are the things that you are kind of craving and wanting more. Um, Also pondering, how have your abilities grown and deepened? How has your thinking changed? I used to look at a situations from this perspective. Now I start to look at them from a different perspective. No matter what, graduate school is transformative. So your ways of thinking have shifted. Also, leadership curriculum is built into our entire graduate experience here. What do you know about those leadership assessments, 360 reviews that you've done? What are some of those things? Doing a brain dump for yourself to reflect, like you've got, here's some of the skills and the things that I've honed. And if you can have an example of that to say, so I had a candidate once who shared that actually was a supply chain class that they said, I was able to apply something I learned in my supply chain class to a situation that we were having in work, like this new process. That's a perfect example to be able to jot down or text to yourself, email yourself this reminder of thinking about the ways that you have been able to apply what you have learned, skills, abilities. That is stuff that you can use in a resume. You might use it in interview preparation as we're thinking about examples of you at your best. We might include that in a cover letter. It might be things that you bring up in networking to explain, why are you looking to do a pivot? Why are you looking to promote within the organization? Well, my class in leading and managing teams really stuck with me. And that's the work that lights me up, is getting to coach and mentor others. And I am interested in being able to promote into a role where I can do more of that. That's where we start to see these things. So when we're working with you as a coach, we're asking and mining this data from you to try to understand more about, like, what are you craving? What are you wanting? So that we can help you then articulate that as you are looking to position yourself for promotion. So this is some of that pre-work that has to get done, or work that's done in the coaching sessions. And so if there's something, adding a bullet to point to your resume about one of the skills or something you learned can be really helpful. So And I'm going to pause. Coach Will, is there anything that's come up in chat or anything you would like to add as you are deep in the trenches on this with me as well?
No, there's nothing in the chat so far. I really like how this is building. I mean, I think about the KSA is the knowledge, skills, and abilities as, hiring managers and HR, that's the framework that they view
Yeah.
your next talent from. And so loving all of these slides that you've
Sure.
gotten here. But no, there's nothing in the chat that needs to be elevated right now. I think it's
Okay.
going. Yeah.
Right. Well, again, if you all have folks, you have questions, especially hard questions, have asked them to Will. So again, as I mentioned, how do you pull this together? One of the things that we offer, and we have examples of this on our website, and coaches were happy to share this with you. You can literally add strategic MBA, strategic supply chain, strategic finance projects to your resume. Adding, like looking at this is a great bullet point from one of our alums from a few years ago in the midst of the pandemic. In the new product design and business development class, Theo, I think you mentioned that was one of your beneficial or high impact classes, but continues to be for a lot of folks, collaborated on a cross-functional consulting team to build a go-to-market strategy. I mean, this is stuff that maybe this candidate wouldn't have had the opportunity to do in their day job, but as a result of their education, they were able to add this onto their resume. And if it wasn't in their resume, it could be, again, an interview story. It could be something that's added to their LinkedIn profile. So being able to pull it together and articulate it is that next level thing. But we always start with reflecting to identify what we want to articulate. And then there's the science of being able to articulate it clearly. So next, so after you've done kind of the internal mining of things, we have to put in the work to understand what are your options within the organization. As we mentioned, it might not be visible to you. You might think, well, my only job that's possible is my boss's job. And they're not leaving. They're staying here forever. We hear that a lot, like, oh, there's no room for me to go in the organization because my boss isn't leaving. And no shade on the boss. It's just that's what that is. But it's like, okay, well, maybe we need to think a little creatively or a little differently about that. But no matter what, you are the expert ish on what's going on in your own organization. So as you are reflecting on those knowledge, skills, abilities, interests, and strengths and leadership capabilities you're bringing to the table, you also need to be thoughtful in assessing what are you actually looking for in this next career chapter? How are you looking to grow and evolve? Hopefully, your current organization is the right place for that to happen. But we also have to have a moment of just continually checking in to be like, is this the right spot for me? What are your motivations for that next career move? Are you wanting the title? Are you wanting the compensation? Are you wanting the broader scope of work? Being honest with yourself, what is it that you're actually looking for? There are times when we are working with candidates and it becomes clear that what they're looking for and what the organization can realistically offer at this time aren't aligned. And that is painful and frustrating, especially when you've invested a lot of time and energy in your degree. Or if you are so fortunate to receive some employer support on your degree. And it's like, okay, my employer supporting me with this, financially, or they're giving me some time off. And now I'm wrapping up my degree and I'm like ready for that next role, but that doesn't align to the needs of the business. And so that is painful. And there's a grief that has to occur there before we can move forward into ideating some other options. And so I want to normalize that does happen. But it starts with you reflecting on what it is that you're looking for. But then again, what could the organization benefit from? What do they need? What's part of the strategic plan? What are they looking to do going forward? How can you solve that problem? Because that's what they pay you to do. I do like to put a pause here and do the reality check by the numbers reality check. There is, again, I said in the beginning, I'd love to be able to give candidates or guarantee you all a wonderful spot bonus from your employers once you complete your degree. However, the reality is with internal movement, so if you are in the organization and looking to position for an internal promotion, likely you will see, and I set expectations low, maybe 3 to 5% increase. 10% would be like amazing, but very often an internal candidate is the more affordable candidate for a role than an external candidate is. So as an intern, and we're seeing a lot of right now in this job market, a lot of companies are leveraging internal candidates for to move into new roles because you are a more affordable candidate. Doesn't mean you're a less than candidate. It's just a market rate. A bottle of water, $4 at the airport, 50 cents at Costco. So, but water's water. So right now, if you're thinking, okay, when I graduate, I'm going to see this huge bump, unless you actually have that in writing, I would say level set expectations that if you are positioning for an internal promotion, that next role may be a 5% bump. If your motivation priority is to see a high financial gain in that next career chapter, then I would strongly encourage you to look outside of your current organization, or if you're in a large organization, to a very different business unit, perhaps. Your highest negotiating potential comes when you're leading the organization. And we work very closely with candidates and alumni on salary negotiation. So we have a lot of examples to back that up, but I do like to just put that in. And Coach Will, you want to share
Yeah,
some?
two things that I'm really glad that you put this in here because this data is helpful to level set what's out there. And this information gets reported every month too when they do like the jobs report. It's not as headline news as the jobs report, but this is actually, these numbers are shrinking, which it shows the competitiveness of the job
No.
market, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we're closer to like the 3% for stayers, we'll call them
Mhm.
stayers, and for people who leave, it's even less than 10% the last couple of months, which is sad. It will jump back up once the job market picks up again. But we also use a term of our boomerang friends. And so if you think about sometimes you're like, you know what? I know that people who leave get higher um, raises, and I can
Yeah.
go jump to one company for a year or two, and then I can come back if I like it at
Mhm.
my original company more and boomerang back. And sometimes companies are very, very glad to have you back and your expertise back. And so sometimes that can help you jump a little bit faster on that too.
Yeah.
So we use that term of boomerang in that case.
Yeah. Yeah. Those salary gains. And it's kind of conventional wisdom in our career coaching space. If you are looking to continue to advance your salary, changing companies' rules every 4 to 5 years is going to be the way you're going to do that most effectively. Saying yes to doing that means saying no to other things. You aren't building long-term consistency within a company. You're changing, changing jobs a lot. There's always trade-offs on this, but I do like to just acknowledge this. And again, this is part of just having a good conversation with your coach about like what is it that you genuinely really want in that next role. And so we can kind of help you figure out what that motivation is and what that might look like. The piece we can't do is snoop around your organization for you and find out what's going on. And so this is where the onus is on you to activate that network that you've got, like your personal connections, within your like team, department, division, but like looking at the Carlson network, snooping on LinkedIn to see how others have advanced their careers within the organization, asking, folks that, hey, I'd love to just get your thoughts about how you've progressed. The two best ways to network with someone are to ask for advice and ask to hear their career story. So if you see another Carlson gopher, an alum, or someone, if you went to a different undergrad, anyway, someone you have some sort of affinity connection to, and saying, hey, I would love to get your thoughts on how I can maximize my graduate degree, my new credentials in this organization. Gathering some insight and from others can be super helpful as you not only just continuing to build your own board of advisors in the organization, but just getting some best practices about what has worked and what hasn't worked. The piece we can't know is what the culture of your organization, your team is like. And so that's where we say activate that network and dig the well before you need it. So leverage that network sooner rather than later. Also looking at things like where's the strategic direction of the organization? Where do you see the growth? I had an alum who works in marketing who was in a company, and about a year ago, she said to me, I'm looking at the strategic plan of my company. I don't think my department's going to be part of this company much longer. She was right. Within 2 months, they were getting sold off. And she wasn't as surprised. So we know, right? So no, knowledge is power. So we'll look for you to be thoughtful about what is it that you want, and then activating the network within the organization so that you can see what might be some possibilities. Who can I be talking to? Then we talk about activating your plan. You might be like, Bridget, I don't even have a plan quite yet. I know, because your plan is going to be varied depending on your situation. So we have a couple of examples about what might your plan might be, what some of your options might be. And again, we have to have this be kind of general content because you're all coming from different spaces. So common things that we see, common things we're working with candidates for will be, while I've been in school, I've been taking on some additional responsibilities. And I want to, but I haven't asked for a comp review because maybe my company's been giving me extra flexibility to pursue my degree or something like that. Ask for a compensation review. So if you're like, hey, I have been um, able to, excuse me, what? I've been able to bring value to the organization. Like I learned how to do Power BI in one of my classes. And now I took all of our rando data and I was able to put it into an awesome dashboard. And that's just something that I've taken on in my role, but there hasn't been additional compensation and it doesn't necessarily fall under the other duties as assigned. It was something I did above and beyond where I took initiative. I would like to talk about how my compensation could reflect some of that extra that I've done. Now, will that necessarily translate into a promotion? Not necessarily. It might translate into, getting a full bonus that year or perhaps something else. But thinking about taking a moment, have I done some new things? Has my degree, has my education helped me bring more value to the organization? Ask for a compensation or a position review. Perhaps in some places it might be called a reclassification because maybe you have just taken on so much in your role that it's like, oh, I think this titling isn't even the way it should be anymore. Um, Another thing is actually having a conversation with your leader about where do you see my career growing in this organization? Where do you see me being able to continue to um, help the organization be competitive? How do you see me helping to achieve our strategic initiatives? Um, if you don't know if there is a clear path forward, we don't know either. So it's hard for us to help you get where you want to go because we don't know what the options are in your organization. And I know in the upper Midwest that can be difficult to have that clear conversation, but clear is kind. And so it's fair to say, I want here language you can use. As I'm pursuing my graduate degree, I am really excited by the work I'm able to do. Um, in data visualization, and I'm seeing some opportunities that were to expand my role. I would love to hear your thoughts on what I can be doing to position myself to be undeniable for a promotion. How can I make that happen? Work with your leader to be a strategic thought partner. It's not an adversarial relationship. It is working with them to and having them help advocate for you to move forward. But you have to have the conversation first. Again, they don't know that you are amazing always because they're also busy trying to take care of their own stuff. So you have to make time to have that conversation and invest them in that process. Um, Finally, we had an MBA a few years ago, fantastic, who she proposed a brand new role. She was working in a pretty hierarchical structure that had lots of pay band 14, 15, 16, 17, A, B. I mean, everything was so structured. And she was like, I think the only way forward is if I do this, this, this. However, the work that she was super excited about, which was very strategic, like she was really able to zoom out and see the big picture of what was going on in the division. That type of chief of staff role wasn't a role that existed in the organization. It exists in other organizations, but it didn't exist there. And so she put the legwork in to start to, find some position descriptions. And this was pre-pandemic. I want to say it's pre-artificial intelligence, which isn't true. AI was there, but she didn't go to ChatGPT. She couldn't go to ChatGPT. She was on LinkedIn. She was sourcing job descriptions. And I was supporting her and helping her in building out that position description and being able to build the position description and clearly articulate how it would meet the needs of the organization and take things off the plate of her leader. And she was able to secure that role. So there's also, we want to work with you to be ideating what are possibilities. Okay. Now, something I mentioned earlier was that we want to have that or we only know what we know. There are certain pieces that are just variables, changing markets, tariffs, life, changing needs of organizations. So there's sometimes we're up against things that are beyond our control. You can be the most amazing candidate who brings so much to the table, and your organization is in dire straits, or your team is really struggling, or the priority on the team isn't your role being able to be expanded or that promotion because there's other things that are taking priority and precedence at that moment. So if you are in that kind of situation, we don't want that to be the end of the story. Take a moment and again, working with your leader as a strategic thought partner to say, could we discuss in 2 months, in 1 month, could we discuss what it might look like if, and if there's other ways to enhance your compensation, enhance your role, being creative, do the thinking for your leader. Make it as easy as possible. I joke about the number of times I have had students, I don't know if Coach Will has had this, but the number of times I've had students say to me, I don't necessarily need there to be food service on campus. I just would like to have my food just here. I just want there to be food when I come to campus. Like, can there just be like a box lunch ready for me? And I think like, and I was like, isn't that so nice? Because someone else has done everything for you, and you can just be like, thank you. I'll take it. That's what you can do for your leader is to say, okay, I want to pose some other ideas about how this might work. Make it as easy as possible for your leader to say yes. Again, always being mindful of collaboration. Again, working with them and not adversarially. We use the same language when we're discussing salary negotiation in general. Is that you don't want to be pushing against somebody. You want to be walking shoulder to shoulder with them in the same direction. You're going to go faster and farther that way. And so working with them to think about, when can we realistically circle back on this conversation? What do you need to see from me in order to make this happen? This is all data that you need to gather to continually assess, is there a path forward for a promotion for me here in this organization? And again, sometimes the answer is maybe not because things have changed. But it's good to have these conversations. In addition, in making it easier for your leader to say yes, to be undeniable, is, or for those of you who are earlier in your educational journeys at Carlson, is positioning yourself to demonstrate the things that you're learning now. Do a stretch project, demonstrate it. If somebody says, we're not able to advance you forward right now because, you don't have the certain experience, say, can I do a stretch project? There are a couple organizations in town who will offer like internal gigs. So they might say, hey, like, hey, we're open to somebody from another team joining in to work 2 hours a week on this project that we're doing, where we're going to be gathering some market research or something like that. So don't, I kind of say, like, if you get a no initially, don't sit on that. Instead, think about what can I be doing to continually demonstrate my value, applying what I've learned, keep stretching. And if by any chance you have an employer who is contributing any dime to your education, um, leveraging that back to them by saying, I appreciate that the amazing corp is contributing and supporting my education. I want to be able to return that back to the organization by being able to demonstrate what I've learned. I appreciate the 5250 that I get a year from you all. With that in mind, I would love to be able to apply some of the things I'm learning about supply chain optimization, or that I'm learning about market research, or strategic planning, or technology integration, or digital transformation back to the organization. Who says no to that? No one should say no to that. So give it back to the organization. Another thing, as we had mentioned earlier, about, like, as you're kind of trying to source ideas within the organization about, like, where might you be able to drive value or add value. If you don't have a mentor or a champion in the organization or someone, this is a good time to get one while you're in school, while you're, or as you're finishing up. Lean into the Carlson network at your organization. But having an opportunity to have a conversation with senior leaders, looping them in on what you're learning. Everybody likes to know what you're learning in school. But having more champions while you're a student or as you're finishing up your graduate degree is going to work in your favor. It's more people that are going to advocate for you and that will serve as that personal board of advisors to help you ideate ways forward to so that you are undeniable for that promotion. Or if things turn out that it's we need to exit the organization, you've got folks that are going to be helping you to maybe source that next role. So we have covered a lot in 40 minutes in terms of bringing that kind of growth mindset of I can do this. I need to also be the one who's driving my own career. First things first, know thyself, empathize with thyself, reflect on what are the amazing skills and talents that you've been able to build, leadership, etc. Do a brain dump for yourself. Being able to know what your options are, which is the part only you can do. We can help you and offer some ideas, but that is the part you really do need to lean into to see what are some of those options and what are your motivations for this next career chapter, and then implementing your plan. We always will encourage you to work with a coach. Never search alone, never aim to advance your career alone. As coaches, we have a lot of anecdotes, stories, examples, and resources that we can share. And so it is encouraged always to connect with a coach. You have lifetime access to career coaching, but especially before you head into maybe your annual review or as you are looking to position yourself for a promotion and pitch, let us be your sounding board and help you get the wiggles out, practice, talk with us. We're happy to do that, and we can offer some insight and some help usually. Also, if you are thinking, I am a little anxious about how to do this, or if I'm talking about money, we've got some great resources on our YouTube channel about salary and salary negotiation and a whole bunch of other things like navigating job searches, and we have recordings and everything. So encourage you to leverage that, go back and look at it again. Confidence lives on the other side of achievement. Very rarely are you asking, positioning for promotion or a raise. It's not something you have done, so you don't have the muscle memory and the confidence that comes with knowing that choreography or knowing how to do it. But you all are grad students or have been grad students, and so you know how to learn new things. And so we have resources to help you learn, and we have people that are here to learn with you. So I'm going to now open it up to the audience for questions, ideas, resources. Etc. And while I do that, Rachel, who's our producer behind the scenes, is going to drop a link in to the chat and inviting you to share some feedback about what you'd like to see with this session. 1 minute of feedback, it's anonymous, but while you're doing that, would love to just open this up for feedback or questions, ideas. So it's your turn, everyone.
Yeah, I had a question. Hi, coaches, Bridget Will.
Hi.
I'm curious around like the timing of the conversation to have with your manager, your superiors. I think a lot of the time compensation conversations tend to be, and you hit on this within the conversation or within the content of the deck, it's like backward looking. I performed, therefore I feel that I deserve X compensation. Where I think part of this conversation is I learned, therefore I'm going to perform in the future, and I feel that I should get this compensation like now sort of thing because I've learned those things and I'm bringing more to the table. So I feel like it's a little bit different. So I'm wondering if like, does it make sense to maybe wait a little bit to have more of that performance that you can point to and say like, hey, yeah, are you seeing what I'm doing differently? Like I'm performing differently and better because of what I've learned? Or do you
Yeah.
want to do it while it's fresh? Like right after you got your degree, like that's when it makes sense to do it.
I think this is a great question, Thea. I would expect nothing less from you that you would ask this really thoughtful question. And so I think there's two things. One, I would always say have a conversation with your leader sooner rather than later in your while you're pursuing your graduate degree about where they see you being able to continue to drive value. Are there opportunities for advancement and promotion? Like try to get as clear as possible earlier on in your education so you kind of know what are they thinking first. So I would say like try to have that conversation sooner. Then when it comes to being able to discuss compensation, if your role has been expanding and there's hasn't been conversation about compensation, definitely have a conversation. If it's like the work has been expanding, like it's just like, oh, I keep being asked to do more and more, bring that up right away. Um, if though, this is like, I've been trucking along, doing my job, everything's great. Now I'm graduating, I'm amazing. I'm going to be an even better employee in the next 6 months. I want to ask for an early raise. No, demonstrated evidence is king always. So being able to just say, here are the things that I've done. Here's the projects I was able to manage. Here are the things that I was able to do. I would say wait to have the conversation until you have some evidence to build up to it. And Coach Will, if you have any other perspectives on that, always open to those as well.
Theo, do you have any follow-up to Bridget before I chime in?
No, that answers my question.
is it.
I'd be
Okay.
curious what you think.
Yeah, I think Bridget covered it well. The 2 points of it's, evidence-based is going to be powerful. So looking backwards, but if you are being asked to take on more, that means new title, new compensation.
Mhm.
So if your job responsibilities change, that's the time to ask. If you've performed really well, that's the time to ask. And then also, keeping in mind those other opportunities to get other types of compensation, like new bonuses established or trainings that you want to go to, or release time for studies if you're in school, things like that. But no, Bridget structured that response quite well.
Thanks.
I had one other quick one if no
Of
one else has
course.
a question. I was curious, how long after we make any sort of a switch, should we continue to reference our MBA in the way that you kind of framed up in this seminar? Is it kind of just for that first switch? Or do you kind of see like parts of this conversation still being applicable like later on down the road? Or really just for like this first switch, whether that's a promotion or a new opportunity?
I would say if the goal is to, if you're looking to position yourself for promotion, or let me back up. When we're working with candidates to think about positioning for like salary enhancements or compensation adjustments, we're always like, what's the evidence? Like, what's the market paying? What would a new hire be paid? What are you doing above and beyond the role? Like those are all the pieces of rationale that you bring to the table that justify like why you want to be at that certain salary level. So if we kind of transfer that over to thinking about in a position. For the sake of this presentation today, it's about like if you're in school right now, you're working with a current employer that you're hoping to stay with and advance with, leaning on the skills gained in your graduate degree, MBA, supply chain, exec MBA, whatever it is, right away. That's the fresh, shiny new thing that's going to be the best way. I think that if you are 2, 3 career chapters down the road post graduation, you're being hired for that graduate education already. Like you're being hired because you've got, and most likely, and hopefully, you're applying to roles that are requiring of that. Like they're requiring an advanced degree or advanced experience. So I don't know that I would only be leaning on that if it was like, let's say, post graduation, you're applying to a job or a couple roles post graduation, you're applying to a job, you earn a role that doesn't require that graduate degree, and you're looking for additional salary, you could lean by saying, here's what I bring that's extra to the table is the graduate degree. That's what I would say. Well, does that make sense, Theo?
Yeah, completely.
Okay, thanks. Things make sense in my brain, but not always when it comes out of my mouth. And Will often then translates for the people. Will?
No, I
Oh,
agree. I think if you're looking at the job description as one of the things, like is it required or is it not? An MBA or advanced degree if you're a specialty master student. The other thing you're looking at is, like as you're advancing to higher level roles, is that a value add that you have that education? Is that something that sets you apart? Is it being considered as part of the negotiation? I don't think it has to be like it's black and white answer. This is the only time you get to talk about it, but I do think that there will be times where it's like, well, you've been with this organization for a while, you're advancing in this role or in this vertical. We've already compensated you based on your MBA. It's assumed at this point, but I don't think there could be other things where you're pivoting functions or you're switching companies, industries, where it's like they got to be looking at the MBA as part of the overall package. And when we talk about negotiations, you know, we say, you know, how did you arrive at these numbers? Asking questions like that. And then it's like, well, did you consider that I'm also an MBA? Or did you consider that I
Mhm.
also have my master's in,
Yeah.
you know, another specialty master's area? But
Mm.
good questions, Theo. Thank you. Are there
Always,
other
always,
questions?
Theo.
Other questions from those hanging on still that want to elevate before we wrap today?
Okay. Well, we do not do Minnesota goodbyes here, so we invite you to share a reaction or a comment in the chat on your way out, and have a good rest of your week. As mentioned, and appreciating your feedback, and we will share this recording will be on our website and our YouTube channel. So thanks, folks, for joining us today.